I know I probably talk about this every interview, but I'm just so passionate about it.
I got really interested in noun of agency rather than the business of agency. So it being more about how you as a woman have agency. You don't need to go out and get agency, you just inherently have it.
Is it difficult to work with creative people?
It can be. It can be. However, that's all I know.
Even a fabricated story, if you know your community really well and what they're looking for, you're going to be convincing even with your lie.
It's just going to be more about how you actually resonate and remain authentic with your audience rather than just what you stand for and hoping like people resonate. Because I think just hoping doesn't do anything anymore.
It's also important to know where your audience is. Where are they hanging out?
I think it's something for first-time CEOs to be thinking about in how are you positioning your brand / what do you want to do / what is the demand.
And we are diving right in. Welcome to episode 5 of the First Time CEO podcast. Today, my guest is Jessie Collier. She's a founder of Working Women Agency, which is a creative job board, newsletter, and career advisory serving 13,000 creatives. She empowers talent to build personal brands for navigating career transitions and landing roles in fashion, art, design, and advertising. Jessie partners with founders and solopreneurs to facilitate the hiring of creative talent and merges creative recruitment strategy with digital content to simplify job searching and enhance hiring effectiveness. We've discussed building a culture where talent and opportunities grow, leveraging storytelling and authentic self-representation, utilizing social media and newsletters to foster a thriving community, using innovative digital tools to streamline processes, prioritizing supportive ecosystems that drive long-term success, first-time CEO lessons and challenges, and more. And with that said, I invite you to join us. Hello, hello, hello! This is the First Time CEO podcast, and I'm your host, Victoria. I am the first time CEO of Olympia. We provide entrepreneurs with AI teams. So if you want to streamline your operations, you can find the link in the show notes. And today I'm super excited to have my new guest on the show, and we are diving right in. So I'm going to present you Jessie Collier today. Hi, Jessie. How are you doing?
Hi, Victoria. I'm so good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have you.
Yes, me too. Thank you for having me.
So you're a recruiter in the creative industry, and you help companies and job seekers to match in arts and fashion. Where does that passion come from, and how did you appear in London in the College of Fashion?
Yeah, so it stems from my mom and dad, actually. So growing up, I was surrounded by architecture books, mid-century modern furniture. Kudos and shout out to my mom, who brought, I feel like, a taste level to me at a very early age. So the value that my parents brought to art and design inherently trickled down to me. And my mom was also a photographer and web video producer at one point, so she had the photography like books around and the cameras around. So ultimately I became just organically interested in the world of fashion and art. And I was drawn specifically to fashion media around the time that YouTube started. So magazines were putting out YouTube lookbooks, like that was the early stages of YouTube. And so I was more interested in niche fashion and art content rather than like movie making and big box cinema. So that led me to London College of Fashion, where they offered a BA in fashion photography. And I didn't find a program like it in the US. So I decided I wanted to be in a New York or in a London. And so I inevitably decided on London. After never having visited London, I just went on a whim and I ended up loving it. I lived there for 4 years And that really informed all of my work now, which is in recruitment in the creative industry, and also helping creative talent build their personal brands and land jobs in such a niche industry that we're going to get into. But that is how I became very intrigued with art and fashion, and ultimately have dedicated my career to it.
How was it there, studying, and how is it different there in London than New York? And why didn't you stay? Sometimes people stay after studying in the city.
I would have loved to stayed. I was on a student visa, so could not stay unless I was sponsored. I did work for a prestigious studio and event space in London that has a New York location, so I tried to get sponsorship in London, but ultimately I graduated in 2020. COVID was happening, the lockdown was happening, employers were just wondering what they should be doing with hiring, there were layoffs happening, so inevitably, also being in the arts field, I just didn't have, I think, as much leverage to stay and to get sponsored, so I inevitably moved to New York. But the difference between London and New York is a lot in just the cultural nuances. I think New York is way more gritty. Honestly, I think people complain in New York more. And at least in the industry I was in and the company I was in, I feel like the people in the London office were a lot more hardworking and did not complain as much, worked longer hours, honestly, for even less pay. So that, and I don't think a lot of people would agree with me. I think a lot of people would say the other way around, but just speaking from my experience, I found there was a lot more grit in London, in the creative industry that I was working in. So yeah, that was my journey from London to New York. And I moved to New York City in January 2021, started working at that studio location that I was in London, but obviously the New York one. Then I went through a series of different roles. So that's, I think, what positions me the best for a career consultant and job search consultant, recruiter, is that I'm able to see other people's experience as a leverage point rather than something that is not relevant for the role at hand. So my progression was I worked on set on fashion production sets. I then worked in client services, so a little bit of sales, a little bit of just day-to-day managing client relations. And then that's what pushed me into, I started handling payroll, onboarding, more HR and talent acquisition, job specifications. So that's then what launched me into, I ended up leading HR at a marketing agency that specialized in D2C brands. So I was doing everything under the sun that an HR manager would do in a mid-sized agency. I was the only HR person at one point. So that was recruiting, that was employer branding, you name it, I was doing it. So that is what got me so interested in launching my own career consultancy and being in recruitment.
Do you remember what led you to start a recruitment agency?
I think it was this supply and demand issue that I'm seeing in the creative industry now, meaning that I think creative industry roles are different from the finance industry, recruiting in tech, recruiting in IT, because creative roles don't require as much of a technical skill set. Yes, some roles do, but overall, if we're going to zoom out a bit from it, creative roles just require more of a conceptual thinking, more about its research, more about connections, more about your personal brand, who you know. And I think I realized how much creatives weren't telling their story right or really leveraging themselves. So I wanted to start a recruitment agency that not only helped founders and solopreneurs recruit talent, but also really nurture the creative job seeker side of things. And that's where I see successful recruitment agencies going. We'll get into personal branding, I'm sure, in this conversation because it's such a big part of, I think, being a creative talent. But yeah, seeing just how much potential there is for a creative talent to leverage themselves, and being able to nurture that from my perspective. Because I think the stronger your positioning is in the creative industry, the more work you're going to get, the more demand you're going to see from future employers. And I think there's not enough education about that, specifically coming from a recruitment agency. I think historically, they're more about their clients and their partners and the companies and the employers, which is important, but I think there's a lack of attention to the job seeker and really helping them and leverage their expertise. Because I think if you nurture both sides, which Working Women Agency does, you are golden because you have a strong rapport with your talent, you have strong rapport with your partners, with founders, solopreneurs, and then you're the matchmaker, which I love doing.
So Working Women Agency, why did you decide to work only with women?
Yeah, so the Working Women Agency concept actually came from a photography project I did in school called Working Women. And I photographed different kinds of working women in London. So a lot of them were some of my colleagues, some of them were photographers, some of them worked at home, some of them worked down in an office, but I shot them all. And also the image of working women in power suits was always very inspiring to me as an aspiring CEO at one point, which has evolved, but that's where it started. And so my intent was more in the interest of how women put themselves together, how there's a whole web of confidence building within that. It gets so deep so quick. And I think I was just interested in that exploration and what is my voice in that? How am I gonna perpetuate that. So then that comes into a lot of people think Working Women Agency is an agency, which it's more a consultancy at the moment, but agency is adjacent to empowerment. And I got really interested in the noun of agency rather than the business of agency. So it being more about how you as a woman, you as a person, you as a human have agency. You don't need to go out and get agency, you just inherently have it. And that I feel like is the baseline of everything I talk about on my platform, the founders I work with, the creative talent I work with. My mission is to make you realize your own agency. So why I wanted to do this with women is I am a woman, and I think women have a very unique experience in this world. I think it's just a one-of-one experience. So it doesn't go much deeper than that. It's just I can speak from being a woman and identifying as a woman, and I know a lot of people on this earth can also relate. And so I want to make a space for that. And I also obviously want to leverage women in their careers and get them visible, get them seen by employers, and ultimately help them build their careers.
That's a very creative approach. So you work only in London and New York City, is it correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And any plans for expansion, or you're okay?
I also work with remote companies, and I do want to expand, yet I think with just thinking about, my specific part in the recruitment space, I think getting specific when you're interested in so many things is key. For me, especially, it's taken me years to get more specific about who I help, what my mission is. And I think that's okay for any CEO, first-time CEO listening.
Absolutely is absolutely fine to figure out and take time.
Yes, and take time. But I think with my specificity in creative industry, I think that will always thrive in New York City and London. And also I lived in London and I have connections there, and I also currently live in New York City. So just leveraging both of those cities is a way to build audience so people know what kind of jobs they're going to be around when they engage with my content and when they see jobs in my newsletter. But I also, due to market demand, feature remote roles. And I think that supports women long term as well, promoting remote work and having that be available to them. So I always make sure to add remote opportunities. And fun fact, in my newsletter, the remote roles are the most clicked on links. So that's not surprising, but it is a metric that I've seen and just want to double down on and really like be still remote first, even if you can't be in New York City or London.
How often people come to you when they want to transition from a totally different industry to arts or fashion?
I would say like a third of people want to do a different industry, but I would say maybe 50 to 60% are career pivoting. So maybe they're in fashion, but they are a marketer and they want to go more in a data-driven route, or they want to go into visual merchandising, or they just want to do something a little more specific. So I would say a career pivot is more popular, but a third of people maybe come from tech and they want to go into fashion.
What is trendy in London and New York City in arts and fashion industry today?
So there's a couple things. There is a growing importance of personal branding for arts and fashion companies. So there is a transition happening, which I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, where there is a transition from faceless brands to the CEO being more visible to like a creator, if you will, being the face of the brand. So we're going from faceless brands to creator-led brands. And I think that is so relevant in arts and fashion because of the consumeristic nature of both of those industries. So that's like a growing importance and something I work closely with founders on. And many of the founders I work with have a social presence and have built a community. And I think they're having a lot of business and a lot of growth. And they're growing their businesses through like LinkedIn B2B, or it's mostly LinkedIn, honestly. So big importance on personal branding for the next decade or so. And also I'm seeing a shift in, this has been going on for a few years now, but I think it's still relevant, which is brands connecting more and more with different tiers of their consumer. So if it's a luxury brand like Prada, Miu Miu, etc., they want to connect with maybe the consumer that aspires to consume their brand. So they might put on community events in New York City, brand activations, they might partner with influencers. So they want to have their brand be like in different cohorts and just continue to be relevant, even if it's not going to be a consumer tomorrow buying their product. But I think there's huge reward in your brand being relevant on social media, in a brand activation, more so than ever before when it was just like in a magazine, for example.
I think probably in any industry it is important today to have a face and for a leader to step up and bring their opinion forward and talk about their brand, and storytelling is so important today. And that's what I understood that I didn't do that enough when we started with Olympia. Today, it's clear enough that you start with the community and with warm leads. And it's easier to sell something to people who can relate and who already know you and love you. And I know I probably talk about this every interview, but I'm just so passionate about it. Well, first of all, let's talk about your audience. Let's talk about who you are serving.
Yes, totally. So I have B2C and B2B offerings. So my B2C offering is kind of both. Like my newsletter is my core product. That's something I developed this year and we launch every first of the month. So that's for founders, for freelancers, and for job seekers, all in the creative industry. My B2B product is a job board posting / job board campaign. So I feature the role across my channels and in the newsletter. Also, I offer sourcing services. So I do screening and then I relay those screenings to a founder or solopreneur to help them speed up their process and to like vet candidates. Also with B2C, I offer job search one-to-one consultations. So that has been my focus for the month of January, February, learning those talent pain points from a hiring manager perspective, which I have, then I give them insight into position yourself like this, or did you think about this, or this is what you could post on LinkedIn to get seen by a hiring manager or the company that you're interested in. So it has been an evolution of products that I offer just based on the demand that I'm seeing and also the audience that I have built, which I would say majority is creative job seekers at the moment. And then over time, developing ways to partner with founders to help them move the needle for their growth.
Yes, so you already answered what I wanted to ask you. So you lead. There are also solopreneurs and freelancers. So I think probably you also give them that advice. Hey, build the community. Start from your social media, right?
Yes, yes. And a key way that I develop my product offerings from Working Women Agency is I built the community, and I always called Working Women Agency a creative talent community. And then when I decided I wanted to move into a newsletter, I positioned it as a newsletter. And that nuance, like that change in language, positions you for founders to then come to you and for new opportunities for your business. So it gave it a more B2B like leverage point rather than just the community. So I had built the community and I'd put all the focus on the creative job seeker, and then over time was talking to founders of what they needed and developed the newsletter. So it was a very organic process. And I think it's something for first-time CEOs to be thinking about in how are you positioning your brand / what do you want to do / what is the demand? And then you assess from that.
What positions are the most popular now in creative industries?
So brand marketing is continuing to be of high demand despite AI even. Just creative is continuing to be an asset to brands. Community is more important than ever. Like that's a buzzword nowadays, but it really is like community over culture. Also social media, because we're more and more getting online. Like we buy products as consumers from brands that we know from ads or from LinkedIn or our phones. So social media managers and creators who can run paid ads or who know how to market online are more important than ever for brands, no matter what size, but I think definitely for the founders that I help who have a small to mid-sized business, they need someone to run social and they need someone well-versed in that. The other side of it is creative operations. So obviously there are a lot of project management tools like Asana, Monday.com, Notion, but you still need someone to manage a lot of those and to help you organize. So I think creative operations is in demand, but also will be growing. What's also in high demand that I'm seeing in creative industry is the format of roles. So that means companies more and more want to hire freelance and contract roles rather than full-time positions. It's less money for the company to hire. Also, it's flexible on like a project basis, which a lot of creative agencies and brands write off of. So I'm seeing more and more if creatives can position themselves as a consultant, if they want to do that, as a freelancer, if they want to do that, I think that can mean huge leverage for them in their career and where hiring trends are going in the industry.
With everything, what is happening in tech and with AI, what signals do you see about the future in arts and fashion? And how futuristic is that? Is it futuristic?
Yeah, I think a lot of luxury brands are tapping like AI generated content, AI generated video and photo shoots. I think it's going to be a blend of things. So it's going to be integration of AI in creative workflows, so that just streamlining things for teams. But I do think it has a little bit of evolution to undergo because AI is like, especially generative AI is a new development. Like it's been around, but I feel like to get into a corporate company's infrastructure, it takes longer than people think. So there's going to be an integration of AI in workflows, but the emphasis is again going to go back to personal brand development. And does a brand have strong influencers behind it, strong creators behind it, to make the business like apparent in a room of people that are distracted all the time and, maybe don't know the brand as well. So AI will automate so much, but I think it's about the human aspect of your brand, what creative you are releasing and who is associated with that creative, meaning who's the photographer, who's the stylist. Those names will still be relevant, but there is going to be some AI optimization in workflows, I think.
How diverse is your clientele, and can you describe from the employer side? And can you describe like 2, 3 different personalities of business leaders that you work with, maybe like long term, and how hard it is to work with creative people? Are they very demanding?
Yeah, luckily the people I work with, the founders I work with, all are organic. So it comes through Instagram or through an event that I attended and I met them, and it just started through organic conversations. So at least from a personality perspective, I already jive with them. And that's who I want to work with. And luckily I have the choice to work with them or not. And so it's very much an organic business relationship as I want to build out Working Women Agency to be. I want to work with the founders that I resonate with and who resonate with what WWA is about. So my current clients are really fun to work with. I honestly have all good things to say. And I work with a social media agency who I have an ongoing relationship with, and I help them source social media specialists. So that's been a really fun client to work with. I also have worked with a PR agency in fashion. So these are all small businesses, so like 10 to 20 people. And I like that scale at the moment because I am a solopreneur. And so I can really only handle that. And that is what allows me to have like a very close relationship with my clients and then thus recruit talent for them. So I like that scale at the moment. Of course, I have a growth mindset, so I'm looking to grow, but I got to be patient a little bit with that. PR and social media are most of my clients at the moment.
Is it difficult to work with creative people?
It can be. However, that's all I know. And that is my friend group as well. My friend group is creatives, and I think I am like one of the best people to be in the position that I'm in. And I mean, I feel so called to it at the end of the day, but I understand the creative, emotional, like turmoil that artists go through and that, a marketer could go through or a photographer. But I am so driven by the business aspect of the creative industry that I see things in a very organized, structured, streamlined way. I'm really good at that. And so I think I have both sides. So I can see a very emotionally reactive creative and see like, okay, well, maybe they have the vision for what needs to be done. And maybe the team is kind of looking for someone who's like extremely bubbly or extroverted or just has a persona, right? So it's all in the nuances, and I think it's just part of like recruitment. I mean, everyone's different, and I guess that's what makes a person just their own. And I think we should just celebrate that. But yeah, of course, it's like any business industry. There are some challenging like folks for sure.
You gotta be a psychologist a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so into psychology and like learning the mindset of like sales and psychology, so I feel like I'm energized by that.
You mentioned something like community over culture. And recently I read an article where the author was saying otherwise, that now the trend is culture over community. What do you think about that?
I come from the standpoint that culture can be fabricated and kind of advertised and not really shown. I think online, like on career pages of company websites, they talk about the culture and they talk about their values. And I'm more even drawn to values rather than culture, because at least values is like something that they hold. Culture is what is made from people being in a room. And that's why I'm more of a proponent of community, because community cannot be faked. You can have 100,000 followers and no comments on your profiles. You can also have 1,000 followers, like 1,200 followers, like Working Women Agency has, and you can average 6+ comments per post. I think that resonates more from all standpoints, that shows community rather than just faking a community. And I think that's just going to be more important as we go forward, is you can kind of buy like followers and you can buy these notions of culture, but you can't buy community, because humans are smart and we're only getting smarter in terms of what we're being sold. And I think it's just going to be more about how do you actually resonate and remain authentic with your audience rather than just what you stand for and hoping like people resonate. Because I think just hoping doesn't do anything anymore.
Definitely. Hoping doesn't work anymore.
Right, it doesn't. And companies are being called out for it. And I've been an HR manager, like I stood behind a culture, and I think like in my experience working for companies, like you do see a culture, you see pieces of it, but you also see it fall apart, or you see we have low retention, like we need to, reevaluate and reassess and go back to our values. So I think if companies lean into their values, they might have a more authentic culture, but a lot of it is just so performative and there's not that much thought put into it now in a lot of ways. So I think community is just more and more important in terms of like if we're going to classify community or culture.
Yeah, I just remember the series that I watched recently. I forgot the name, but I will find the name and I will put it in the show notes as well. It is about two similar stories. One was a true story, how the girl got cancer and how she chose to kind of treat it with organic products and juices and stuff like that, and didn't believe in traditional medicine. And then another girl was just jealous of her. So she fabricated her story. And for some reason, at some point, her story appeared to be stronger than the real one of the first girl.
Why?
So I don't know. She delivered it better. She was more convincing. She was more, she found the way to deliver it better to her community, I think. And it's a story about one of the greatest scams and lies based on the true story. So I was thinking about that even a fabricated story, if you use the tools and methods that work with community, and if you know your community really well and what they're looking for, you're going to be convincing even with your lie. And that's, I think, some of the brands are moving forward with a fabricated story sometimes. And then when it hits the fan and it's all comes out as a lie, like, sinking down. Their ship is sinking down. So I think every lie has every lie will be on the surface sooner or later. So that's, I think, nowadays, and tell me if I'm wrong, nowadays it's important to be real.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we see authenticity like shouted from the rooftops, everywhere. It's like all brands want to be authentic, but that's why community is so much stronger. Like culture can be fabricated and fake and temporary. You can make posts about your culture, but that's the surface level of it. Back to the engagement thing. Do you have anyone engaging with your brand? If not, you don't have community. You have a fabricated culture.
Also, a fabricated culture can be so harmful for people who believe in the brand. That's what happened in the movie. And you don't play with cancer. It's such a huge problem, and such a disease, like lying about it and about healing cancer with unconventional methods just make people die. And so now I see more and more brands and people behind brands. Like, for example, Celeste Barber, and she recently launched her beauty brand called Bui. And I'm a big fan. And you build your personal brand, you build your personality, and then everything around it And then if people resonate with you, they will buy what you sell
Yeah.
because that's who you are, basically.
Yeah, and it's ringing so close to the element of trust. And when you break that trust and you've built trust upon a fabricated culture or a false story, and your community finds out, or your audience, your consumer finds out, you're done for. It's very hard to regain trust. And I think I'm a big proponent of like be patient when you are building a brand and figuring out what you're going to offer if you're in that stage of entrepreneurship, like pivoting from a product or whatever it is. Like take time to develop that and ask yourself, like, how does my audience trust me and what do they come to me for? But all back to, yeah, it's very hard to regain trust once it's broken.
Absolutely. And I think I started with who am I, what I want, and what I'm bringing into the community, what I'm helping with. How can I help without betraying myself and who I am, you know? Coming back to you as an entrepreneur. So you are a solopreneur, and I'm just very curious, where did you start? And you mentioned organic growth. How did it work for you, and what marketing channels and growth tools worked for you and growing your business?
Yeah, so I started on TikTok in 2022, 2021, building communities. So I built like 11,000 followers on TikTok in around 3 years. So that was all organic. Then I built like 1,200 followers on Instagram, all organic, and then have about 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. I think there's a lot of pressure to grow really quickly and go viral and have all eyes on you so quickly. But I'm really glad that I am growing at the pace that I am because I get to actually connect with my community. Because I get to actually learn what they need and what I can best help them in and what service I can provide. So what really has moved the needle is TikTok for just building awareness, testing content, figuring out what resonates, how to make short form video that I resonate with, that an audience would resonate with. And that's how I started. And I really ran with the multi-platform approach. Like, I think you can start on one platform, you can start on 3, but I started on 1, TikTok, and then just grew from there. So another strategy that has really helped me is having the newsletter and then testing what products most resonate with people by dropping waitlists. This is not a new concept, but it is something that has immensely helped me in time management, saving me time on, I don't want to develop a product if there's no demand for it. If my audience is not gonna like want to buy it or want to opt in. So
Smart. That's very smart. Very smart. That's how we started as well. Because
yeah,
you need to have is there if there is a demand. If there is not a demand and you already build and spend so much time to develop it, and then it's like it's not selling, and you're like, why did I waste my time?
exactly. Exactly. And so I developed a wait list and then they're off of my social media channels. There's someone I can directly connect to. They're the ones that I've had one-to-one calls with and have turned into one-to-one clients. So the waitlist strategy is huge. And I learned about that from Amy Porterfield. She has a newsletter webinar and it was free. I'm a big proponent of using webinars, which yes, they do want to sell you their course at the end of it, but use the webinar to learn from someone that has made millions from a newsletter and then apply that to your current strategy. And the smallest thing to incorporate can be the biggest impact for your business, which is what I have seen in me as a solopreneur. I don't outsource anything at the moment. That's definitely in the books, but I don't outsource anything, so I have to make sure that I'm able to manage it as well and still provide that service. So waitlist has been the game changer of testing like market demand.
Okay, so I think it's very hard to know, and I've been a solopreneur before as well. It's hard to know what's working from the very beginning, so you have to test every marketing channel and then see what's working. So did you do everything at the same time and then niche down? And what works best today for you?
Today, I am in a place of I want to see like authentic connection and B2B sales through what I'm posting. So I want to see if both of those are resonating. Meaning, I recently got on LinkedIn after only focusing on TikTok and then Instagram a little bit, but mostly TikTok. And what really helped me in figuring out how I was going to see through some of my goals was learning about the platform context. And this is talked about in Day Trading Attention, which is a book by Gary Vaynerchuk. I highly recommend any first-time CEO marketer reads it. But it talks about platform context. It was written last year, so very relevant. But it's a no-brainer to kind of think about it, but LinkedIn is the boardroom of social media. And so people go on LinkedIn with a business mindset automatically. They're thinking about career, they're thinking about their work, they're thinking about services, they're thinking about who they want to hire. So as I started posting on LinkedIn, that's where I got 3 B2B sales without even advertising my services. I was just posting my thought leadership, posting my point of view, and organically things started to happen. So that's how I've seen the development of my marketing strategy is continuing to test, but then really taking that time each week to reflect on, okay, what posts after I have built a little bit of a following resonate, what's getting shared, what did someone see that they ended up reaching out to me and, wanting to book a one-to-one or wanting to partner on a newsletter feature. So it's all about, I think those moments of reflection, which is really hard when you are building something. And if you're a solopreneur or a co-founder, you're in it so much. So for me, it's been, yes, get on the relevant platforms and learn the platform context, but also take that time to reflect and see, is this something I'm just churning and, nothing's really happening? Or is it actually working for me in line with the goals that I have?
Okay, so first TikTok was really good for you. Then was Instagram and also newsletter. These are the main marketing channels that worked initially, right? And now you're leveraging LinkedIn, correct?
Yes.
And so far, what services bring you most of the business, most of the money?
Yeah, right now it's in my job search one-to-one clients. So I work one-on-one, helping creatives build their personal brand and land jobs through it. Because that's how I've secured all the roles that I've landed at companies and how I'm just seeing trending going in hiring strategies from the hiring manager standpoint.
Do you think that's because of the personal approach? You can tap into the problems of the person and help quicker and just kind of understand what the need is from the get-go?
I think a personal brand is so strong because it allows for someone to get an idea of you before they even call you in for an interview. And I think everyone is looking for efficiency. Everyone is looking for, what is this person about? Especially a recruiter. They're stalking you. And so the more that you have from an insight perspective, or you're active on LinkedIn, you're investing in your career, that's something I would want to see in someone. What are they currently working on? And it doesn't mean you have to be an influencer or creator. It just means I want to know more about you before I invest my time in calling you in for an interview. And it also helps me as a hiring manager to persuade my manager, and we should, call this person in. They've worked with XYZ brand. They know this person. That is sounding more enticing than a blank kind of still updated LinkedIn. It has a nice headshot and stuff, but it doesn't have any posts, no posts, nothing optimized, no relevant client lists in the work history. Because again, in the creative industry, it's more about names and who you know rather than a technical skill set. So that's what I've seen.
So one-on-ones are on the employer or employee sides or both?
The employee. employee side. So I'm doing one-on-one career consultations. And then for my B2B side, have businesses feature their job openings in the newsletter. And that's my B2B offering.
So, what is the most challenging so far in being an entrepreneur and solopreneur and the first-time CEO?
I think the most challenging has been patience with developing products, building audience, and then being patient with myself. I think anyone listening to this is probably very driven and ambitious and wants to build something. And I think we don't give ourselves enough grace to do that. But I actually think, now I'm 3 to 4 years in of building WWA. I think I wouldn't have done it any quicker, or I wouldn't have grown following any faster, because that's what I could handle at the moment. So I think always knowing you're right where you need to be, that comes up constantly. The other thing is the other obstacle I have encountered is social media is rented space, as opposed to a newsletter is owned space, owned audience. So I learned that probably 2 years in, and then amidst the TikTok ban as well, I have my largest following there. I was like, I really need to double down on my owned audience, so my email subscriber list, because that's how I'm going to inevitably leverage like open job roles, and that's just going to go further than any social media platform. So learning that, yes, use social media as your marketing engine, but ultimately have a place where that audience can interact with you more in a owned space. So that's why I love a newsletter, and I love growing my email list. It allows me flexibility in, I can offer them something next month that would be of value to them. I can offer something in 3 years, in 30 years. So that was a huge learning.
I'm like taking mental notes.
If I started again, I would have the newsletter at the same time I am building my social media presence, because you always want somewhere where your audience can go, where you own the contact, you own where you're going to lead them.
How did you get your first customers, and how do you acquire and retain them?
Yeah, so 2 areas. So one is my first client came from Instagram. I ended up sharing a open role that they had, and it was when I was just in the mode of reposting roles. I wasn't even offering like a B2B product at this point. And they ended up reaching out a couple months later saying, hey, we found 3 great interns from your community. So then I nurtured like a relationship with them and advertised their roles on my newsletter. The other way I have attracted clients and found clients and then thus retained them is through IRL events. So I go to a number of female founder events, but also other founder events that aren't just for female communities. And I just talk to founders. And I don't try to sell my services, but I make it known like what I do and who my community is and the demographics of it, etc. And I kind of just see what resonates. And I found my social media client through that, which is a social media agency based in New York, but they also offer remote roles, which I think is amazing. The founder's female. So, and I met her actually after an event that I ended up posting about on social, and then we reconnected after the event. So I would say the power of IRL events, and especially in the creative industry, again, being in a metropolitan city, there's still such value in that. Because yes, you can make your brand known online, but we're all human at the end of the day. We want to connect IRL, and it's easier to vet someone if you are just meeting them in person.
What are your lessons as an entrepreneur that you learned through this 3-4 years?
I think focus on value. And if you're unsure of what value you offer, just focus on creating. I think just focus on the bare bones, even like repurpose something that you did in the past and try another iteration, or go and do market research and see what resonates for me. But always focus on the value piece and not just what it gives you. Because yes, you want to energize yourself, but you are in a business. You are in service to others. So focusing on value is huge. When I'm at a loss for what to do next, I just come back to what's the value I bring and what is the vision I hold, and often I get ideas from that. The other thing is leveraging AI. I use AI every day, and I think every entrepreneur can leverage it, any solopreneur. And then the last one I would say is focus on genuine connections. Again, like not focusing on how can we work together. It's more like, what is this person about? What vibe do I get from them? What's the energy? And I am very just so much of energetic vibe feeler, for lack of a better way to say it. And so I'm really interested in doing business with founders, solopreneurs, creative talent that I just have a genuine connection with kind of right off the bat. And that could be developed over time. But I think genuine connections hold longevity, and I'm interested in longevity in business.
What skills are you developing right now?
I'm developing communication skills. So I read a lot of kind of tips on presenting and how to storytell. I think those are huge. I also read on this relates, but how to network. So I've read The Third Door by Alex Banayan. It's a really good read on just thinking about networking in a different way and how to really get to connect with someone who is a founder or a CEO of like a really large company, for example.
We talked about marketing channels and client acquisition. Is there anything else you want to add? What is working best for you within business development, or we've covered everything?
I think we've covered what the focuses are. However, I can't emphasize enough how important LinkedIn is. And I listened to your podcast with the Recruitment founder who also said this, I think, but I have seen it just in my 2 months of posting on LinkedIn, and I anticipate we're just in a very interesting time with LinkedIn. The platform's changing. They integrated short form video. Creative is now the content that moves the needle for your business, and it can connect you to like a long-term client now. And I don't think another social media platform in a business context is as powerful as LinkedIn. So I can't stress enough LinkedIn. I say it to all my job search clients, start posting on LinkedIn, because it's about getting visible and it's about personal brand awareness. And again, doesn't mean you have to be a content creator, just means get visible so people know what you're up to when they come to your profile.
Yeah, and who you are. I love storytelling rather than just pure selling or subscribe or buy or, let's have a call. So that's what I love about LinkedIn, and reading people's posts is so much more interesting when there is a story there.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Any advice you want to give to other first-time CEOs?
Yes. Pick a social media platform if you haven't already and go hard. Start creating, I would say post something every day. If that sounds daunting, do it at what cadence you can, but start building community in some way on a platform. And you don't have to have your mission all drawn out, but start. Because I think in building brand today, you need to have some brand awareness on social media. That's how people are going to find you. That's how they're going to go to your website. And so I can't preach that enough to pick a platform and go hard.
In terms of picking the platform, how to pick the platform so you are not just banging against the wall? Yes. What's the right approach there?
Yes, so one is two parts. One is learning platform context, like I mentioned in the Day Trading Attention book, learning that Instagram is the modern homepage, LinkedIn is the boardroom of the internet, TikTok is for humor. So that's one part. The second part is learning what creative outlet you most resonate with / what you can output quickly. So meaning I love short form video. I am not really a copywriter at all. I use AI to help me copyright and then I just adjust from there. But I can record a video really quickly, get an idea out there and post it. That's my workflow. And I think everyone listening has to delve into what comes naturally to me. what resonates most. Because I think you can have success on any of the platforms, but how you can not have so much resistance around your output is really, really important for longevity and building a following.
Yeah, I think it's also important to know where your audience is. Like,
Yes.
where are they hanging out? Because
Mhm.
you want to post on TikTok, for example, and I know that probably wouldn't work for us because our audience at Olympia is, busy entrepreneurs, and then they're not necessarily like sitting there and scrolling TikTok all day
Right.
long. But I know that it can work well for students, for example, or, someone else. So I know that my platform is LinkedIn because all the business people are on LinkedIn. So that's also, I think, you need to understand who you're connecting with and why, rather than just like bluntly posting whatever you can create. You also mentioned webinars. Do you do them yourself?
Not currently, but it's in the works because I have been doing so many one-on-one client calls, which I love doing that. I love learning about my audience that way, but I can't reach as many people if I do one-on-ones. So I have ideated some kind of webinar, some kind of group coaching. I haven't nailed down the product yet, but using wait lists to kind of test, what is the interest and what resonates most with me. Like, how can I provide the most value in a call? And I think webinars are obviously a no-brainer there. So, yeah, stay tuned for that.
Yeah, webinars, and then you can niche down to one-on-one
Yeah, exactly.
and get like many one-on-ones.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So you mentioned several books, and I will leave them also under the episode. Any other resources you want to recommend?
Yes, so self promo is the Working Women Agency newsletter.
Of course.
Because I spend a lot of time on it, and I think it's a really amazing product that's free. You can sign up for free. I don't charge for it, but that is what I'm passionate about, is having a free product that is high value, because I want to remain accessible to any job seeker, whether they're laid off, whether they're a founder who doesn't have any funding. Like, I just want to be a resource for any scenario. So the Working Women Agency newsletter has not only jobs, but also current galleries and exhibitions to visit. I extract insights from the industry itself. So you get a link to the article, but you also get a blurb of the insight that you would need to know as a CEO, as a job seeker, as a freelancer, whatever ecosystem you're in, it would be relevant. And then I also have like tools that I use as a entrepreneur, to build my business and the results that these products have got me. So it's a newsletter that I'm really passionate about because it has so much more than just open jobs on it. The other thing is, if you're in New York City, I go to Creator Economy NYC. It's a networking event group where you can meet marketers, founders, creators, and they have really insightful panels about the creator economy. And even if you're not a creator, I highly recommend it just as a founder, because there's a lot of entrepreneurial mindsets in the room. I've always made a solid connection there. But other than that, it's the two books I mentioned. I saved them to all my friends.
What's next for Jessie Collier?
What's next for Jessie is developing more digital offerings, so more passive offerings that resonate with my audience, trying out group coaching because I feel like I've really honed in on this one-on-one offering, but I know the people that I see in the one-to-one calls really are yearning for community. They really want to feel connected to the other people that are in Working Women agencies. So I'm developing out how can they feel more connected with me as well, and how can we all add more value to each other's lives. So working on both of those things.
This has been amazing. And I'm super grateful to you for all this information and for your creative input. So thank you so much for this episode and for all the knowledge that you shared today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Victoria. I really enjoyed it.
So I wish you good luck on your journey, and you guys, I'm going to post all the links and resources that Jessie shared today under the episode in the show notes. And I'll see you soon in the next episode. Stay tuned. Follow me on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. Also, all the links below. And I'm looking forward to see you next time. Bye.